The music was still playing when the silence began, not the gentle kind, but the kind that sucks the air out of a room and makes every heartbeat sound too loud. I remember standing there among rows of smiling guests, phones already raised to capture what was supposed to be a perfect moment. When something felt wrong. The bride was glowing, hands trembling slightly as she waited at the altar, eyes locked on the man she believed she knew completely. Flowers lined the aisle, candles flickered softly. And the officiant cleared his throat, ready to begin. Then the screen behind them lit up. At first, people thought it was part of the celebration, a surprise montage, maybe childhood photos, a sweet gesture before the vows. A few guests even smiled wider, leaning forward in anticipation. No one was prepared for what came. Next, the video didn't start with laughter or romance. It started with his voice low, careless, saying things no groom should ever say on his wedding day. A ripple moved through the crowd as faces shifted from joy to confusion. The bride turned slightly, her smile freezing as the words continued, sharper now. Crueler whispers broke out, then stopped all at once as the meaning of the images became impossible to ignore. Secrets carefully hidden for years were suddenly projected larger than life, impossible to escape. The groom's face drained of color. He took a step back, shaking his head, as if denial alone could erase what everyone was seeing in that moment. Time seemed to stretch. The flowers, the music, the decorations, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was the truth, raw and exposed, unfolding in front of hundreds of witnesses. The bride's hand slipped from his, her eyes filling with disbelief, then pain. Then something even heavier, understanding. Someone in the audience gasped. Someone else quietly stood up and walked out. The officiant said nothing. No one knew what to do when a wedding turned into a confession. This is not a story about a ceremony gone wrong. It's a story about what happens when lies reach their breaking point, when love collides with reality in the most public way possible. It's about the moments before and after that video, the signs that were missed, the people who knew more than they admitted, and the choice that had to be made when the truth could no longer be ignored. Stay with me, because what happened at that altar didn't just end a wedding, it changed lives forever, and the silence that followed was louder than any scream. The music was still playing when the screen behind the altar flickered. At first, everyone thought it was part of the wedding montage, childhood photos, smiling memories. Something sentimental. I remember the groom squeezing the bride's hand, both of them facing the screen with nervous smiles. Then the image changed. The sound cut. A video began playing that none of us had ever seen. The groom's smile froze before slowly draining from his face on the screen. He appeared in a dimly lit room, his voice unmistakable, his laughter too familiar. He was speaking to someone off camera, calling her by a name that was not the bride's. The words were intimate, careless, cruel in their honesty. A gasp rippled through the crowd like a wave. Chairs scraped. Someone whispered his name in disbelief. The bride didn't move at first, she just stared, blinking, as if her eyes refused to accept what they were seeing. The video continued, each second heavier than the last. It wasn't just one moment. It was months, dates, times, hotel rooms, promises spoken in the dark. The groom tried to step toward the screen, panic flashing across his face. But his legs seemed rooted to the floor. His parents sat frozen in the front row, his mother's hand trembling as it covered her mouth. The bride finally turned to him. Slowly, her face pale and unreadable, she asked him one question, her voice barely audible. Is this real? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The officiant stepped back, unsure of what to do. The wedding had stopped being a ceremony, it had become a public reckoning. Someone in the back quietly stood and walked out, then another. The guests didn't know where to look. Some stared at the floor, Others stared at the bride, waiting for her to collapse, to cry, to scream, but she didn't. She stood there, her white dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a life that no longer existed. She reached up and slowly removed her veil, her hand steady despite the storm inside her. The groom whispered her name, begging, explaining, but his words sounded hollow now, stripped of meaning. She didn't answer him. Instead, she faced the guests and apologized for something that was never her fault, behind the altar. Chaos unfolded quietly. The bridesmaids gathered around her, some crying openly, others furious. One of them admitted the truth had been sent anonymously just hours before the ceremony. Timed perfectly so it couldn't be stopped. No one knew who sent it. Maybe it was the other woman. Maybe it was someone who couldn't watch the lie continue. The groom tried to follow the bride as she walked away, but her brother stepped in front of him, blocking his path without a word. The message was clear. This moment was over. This marriage would never begin. Outside the church, the air felt colder. Sharper, the bride stood alone for a moment, breathing deeply, holding herself together with sheer will. She looked back once at the doors, at the life she had imagined, at the man she thought she knew. Then she turned away. Inside, the guests slowly dispersed, the decorations still glowing, the flowers still fresh, mocking the heartbreak they had witnessed. The altar stood empty. The silence complete. What was meant to be a beginning had ended as a warning about truth, about betrayal, and about how secrets always find their way into the light. The hall never returned to the way it was before that moment, even after the guests slowly stood up. After the murmurs turned into awkward excuses and chairs scraped against the marble floor. Something invisible stayed behind, heavy, broken, final. The flowers were still fresh, the candles still burning, but the love everyone came to witness had already died in front of their eyes. I watched people leave without saying goodbye. Afraid that words might make it real, the bride sat frozen, staring at the altar where promises were meant to begin a lifetime, not end it. And the man at the center of it all stood alone, exposed not by rumors or whispers, but by truth raw, undeniable, and irreversible. Weddings are supposed to be about hope, about believing that two people can protect each other from the worst parts of the world, but sometimes the most dangerous secrets are hidden behind smiles, suits, and perfect photographs. That day taught us something painful but necessary. Silence protects lies, and truth, no matter how cruel, sets something free. Not everyone gets the ending they dreamed of, but sometimes escaping a lie is the bravest beginning of all. If this story moved you, disturbed you, or made you think twice about the masks people wear, don't walk away quietly like the guests at that wedding. Stay here, subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories that uncover the truths we're often too afraid to face. Like the video if you believe honesty matters. And share it with someone who needs to hear this message tonight, because some stories aren't just meant to be watched, they're meant to be remembered.